Legend Has It LLC presents Breaker. Tales of the Outlaw Mages Book 1. Written by Amy Campbell. Read for you by Matt the AI narrator. Chapter 1. Mavericks and Magic. Blaise. Keep your hands where I can see them. Blaise startled at the voice, its edge dangerous as the strike of a rattlesnake. He kept his gloved hands high as he walked into the black market. The speaker loomed in the pale blue glow of mage lights that lined the long, narrow room. Sorry. First time. Blaise winced at the hesitation in his voice. He had every right to be here. The man leaned his forearms along the top of the bar, dusty bottles lining the shelves at his back. His eyes were little more than slivers above a black bandana pulled over his nose, his shoulders broad like a bull. Who sent you? Marion Hawthorne. Blaise's heart raced. Like the other man, he wore a bandana to conceal his face. Blaise considered the bandana helpful on the dusty road, but he chafed at the anonymity of it for this transaction. According to his mother, the proprietor was a wanted man. It was safe to assume that anyone setting foot in the building was in similar straits. Anonymity kept all involved from swinging from a tree. All the same, the cotton bandana tickled his nose. It was irritating. He was hard-pressed not to twitch or rub at it. Blaise reminded himself appearances mattered at the black market. Monthly delivery? The man asked, not bothering to identify himself. Blaise didn't see anyone else in the building, so he presumed the man was Tom Slocum, proprietor of the black market. Yes. Blaise stepped closer when the silhouette of Slocum's shoulders relaxed. Good. Slocum's eyes glittered as he got a read on Blaise despite the bandana. You bring a list? A list. Right. His mother needed more supplies for her alchemy. The black market specialized in hard-to-find items. Why, yes. He lifted a hand to the pocket at his chest. Slocum watched him with an air of boredom. Blaise pulled the list out and laid it out on the bar. Slocum picked it up, scanning for a moment before looking back at Blaise. Unload your wares. Set 'em on the bar. Right. Thankful for the guidance, Blaise turned on his heel and walked to the door. He pushed it open with his shoulder. The blazing sun was a harsh contrast to the interior of the black market. Blaise tugged his hat lower to protect his eyes from the glare. The family pony, Smokey, ignored him as he walked over and opened the tailgate of the cart. Blaise adjusted the fit of his gloves and then pulled out the first of the wooden crates. The contents of the crate sloshed with the movement. Soft linen protected the glass vials from damage. One at a time, he carried all 3 crates inside and set them on the bar. Boots creaked on floorboards as Slocum moved in the back room. Blaise looked around, taking the measure of the interior while he had the chance. The bar stretched across most of the room, a few bar stools butted against it. Someone had shoved broken tables and chairs into one corner. The dusty remains of a billiards table sat near a window. Blaise supposed the black market might have been a saloon once upon a time. Or perhaps it still was a saloon. He wasn't sure. Aside from his nervousness at dealing with Slocum, the worst part of the place was the lack of airflow. It was stifling. Between his hat, bandana, and gloves, a steady trickle of sweat beaded his face. He mopped the sweat on his forehead with one sleeve, causing his glove to ride up. An ominous click sounded behind him. He turned to see Slocum on the other side of the bar, rifle trained on him. Keep the glove on. I know what you are, Breaker. His tone was low and brooked no argument. Sorry, Blaise squeaked, cheeks burning with shame. He tugged the glove to cover the exposed skin on his hands. How does he know about me? Had word of his magic traveled this far? Had one of his parents told him? I'd hate to put Marion's kin in the bone orchard, Slocum drawled, his tone cool as he settled the rifle beneath the bar. Blaise shivered as he realized the man meant cemetery. So you get the one warning. Blaise nodded stiffly. He hadn't expected to have a gun pulled on him. Now he knew better. Someone with the savvy and experience of Slocum would be ready for trouble, even if it was accidental. Supplies are here. Slocum hefted a crate onto the bar and shoved it toward Blaise. Coin will follow in a moment. Blaise hesitated before pulling the crate closer and peering inside. Brown paper bags obscured the contents. He plucked them out one by one to be sure they were the correct items. Delicate purple mushrooms clustered in one bag. Check. Bright yellow moss in dried strips in another. Check. Slocum used a crowbar to pry the lid off one of the crates. He watched as Slocum rifled through the contents, a greedy smile twisting his lips. Your mother's quite the alchemist. You have her talent? Slocum resealed the crate and set it aside. Blaise shook his head. Not with these hands. Slocum grunted. True enough. He picked up a crate and carried them one at a time to what Blaise supposed must be his storeroom. The proprietor returned with a clinking leather pouch. He set it on the bar in front of Blaise. Normal monthly pay. Slocum settled his bulk atop a nearby barstool. Blaise opened the pouch, spilling the coins out to count. Trust no one to hand you the right amount the first time, his parents had cautioned him. Alchemy was not an inexpensive profession or openly practiced. Slocum's eyes tracked him as he counted. Blaise's muscles tensed in response. He would be glad to leave this place. You a maverick? Slocum asked after Blaise finished counting. Blaise startled at the question. It was blunt and came out of nowhere. What? Slocum gestured to Blaise's gloved hands. You're the sort the salties look for. Mage. What happens if they come calling in Decina? He jerked his chin toward the door. Mavericks are the ones that get away from 'em. Did something happen? Blaise tried to keep the quiver from his voice. For hundreds of years, the Salt Iron Confederation pushed their ideology across the face of Etheria. Their goal, to bring mages and magical creatures alike under their control. Geography and a stubborn consul kept Blaise's homeland from the Confederation. Had something changed? Slocum gave a slow shrug. I hear gossip. Of course you do. Blaise didn't know the full story on the black market, but rumor had it each day of the month it moved to a new location. On the 5th, it existed in this ramshackle building near the border of Decina. Slocum's peculiar magic allowed him ample opportunity to collect news from all over. The black market proprietor intimidated Blaise, and though he wanted to ask more, he didn't. Thanks. I'll be on my way then. Slocum nodded. Nice doing business. Keep your hands to yourself, Breaker. Stress knotted Blaise's neck. He shoved the pouch of coins into his shirt pocket. Blaise grabbed the crate of supplies and balanced it against his hip as he headed for the exit. His goal was to put some distance between himself and any further uncomfortable conversations. He loaded the supplies into the back of the pony cart, securing the crate to prevent jostling during the journey home. Blaise pulled an empty bucket from the back of the cart. He walked over to a well located a short distance from the black market and filled it with fresh water, then carried it over to the parched gelding. Smokey dunked his muzzle into the bucket and drank his fill while Blaise weighed his options. He was hungry. His choices were to either picnic where he was or eat as he drove back. Smokey knew the way better than he did and would need little guidance. The sooner I get home, the better. Once the gelding had his fill of water, Blaise emptied the bucket and stowed it in the cart. He untied Smokey from the hitching post, then stepped up to the driver's seat. Smokey didn't wait for him to settle into his seat and disengage the brake before starting on his way. I know. I want to get home too, Blaise muttered to the pony. Blaise pulled his lunch out from beneath the seat. Smokey had things under control. As he ate, he reflected on the outing. It had been a success. He ticked off his accomplishments. Represented his family's business at the black market. Sold their wares. Successfully returning home with pay. True, his parents had laid everything out for him to make failure difficult. All he had to do was follow their directions. Blaise was going to declare it a victory, regardless. Hopelessness washed over him as he looked at his gloved hands. He had endured scorn and ridicule about his magic for most of his 22 years. It was difficult to feel betrayed by his own flesh. Walking disaster. The reason we can't have nice things. Ruiner. Sorcerer. Heretic. He had heard every name in the book. Every single one of them felt true. Because of his magic, he wasn't just an example of a failure to launch, he was a burned-out boat at the bottom of a river. But today might change things. He had a measure of success. A smile ghosted Blaise's lips. If they let him go to the black market again next month, he stood a chance of convincing them he could move to another town. He could seek an apprenticeship. Blaise could start a new life. Only if he could hide his magic. He had tried to do that before. And failed. It was worrisome that Slocum knew of his magic. But other than treating him with caution, the man hadn't seemed upset by it. Not like the townspeople in Bristle. Anyone who knew Blaise in Bristle would turn and walk in the other direction if they saw him. No one wanted to be around to see what destruction his magic wrought. He noticed a hole developing in the palm of his right glove, exacerbated by his nervousness. His magic was always at its worst when he was out of sorts. Blaise poked at the hole with his index finger. Before too long, his skin would be visible. He made a mental note to check and see if they had leather at home for patching. Smokey laid back his ears and whisked his tail, nudging Blaise from his rambling thoughts. The gelding rumbled a warning nicker. Blaise cursed. "I'm an idiot." He had forgotten one of the most important rules of the gutter and untamed territory. Always keep an eye turned to the sky. A golden speck in the clear cerulean sky bore down on them as Blaise drew Smokey to a tentative halt. There was no sense trying to outrun them, not now. Only a fool would try to outrun an outlaw on a pegasus. Blaise drummed a rhythm on his knees, trying to recall the old nursery rhyme about appeasing outlaws. His mind was a blur as he tried to think. 1 gold coin? 2. 2 sounds right. He pulled the coin bag out of his pocket. With luck, the outlaw wouldn't perceive him as a threat or a more valuable target than he was. Blaise shook 2 coins out of the pouch and pulled the laces taut. He hoped the outlaw didn't consider the crate of alchemy supplies worthwhile plunder. The Pegasus landed on the road, hooves striking the ground with a thunderous impact. A dust cloud swirled around steed and rider. As terrified as Blaise was, he had never seen a Pegasus this close. It was stunning. The equine's coat glistened the same color as the golden coins in his palm, its mane and tail as pale and fine as gossamer. The afternoon sun glinted off the Pegasus's wings as they splayed open, banded like a hawk's. Blaise inhaled a breath of admiration as the steed arched its neck. The rider slipped down from the modified saddle, boots striking the ground with a sharp staccato. Blaise jumped, startled back to reality. The grizzled outlaw used his knuckles to tip back his hat, locks of blonde sticking out like straw. He pulled up his flight goggles, snapping them into place against his forehead. The breeze tugged back the man's tan duster. In the blink of an eye, Blaise stared down the gleaming barrel of a 6-gun. Things had been going so well. Jack. The morning was rife with fruitless leads and frustration. No one would blame him for hankering for trouble by spooking a random traveler. Even outlaws deserved some of the simple joys in life, Jack reasoned. The pony cart trundling along on the road from the black market to the Decinan border was too much of a temptation. Jack tried to leave his antics for more deserving targets. A salt iron baggage train or stagecoach was a prime target. He left the smaller merchants unharried, out of common courtesy. But not always. Outlaws weren't known for being polite. His palomino Pegasus snorted, prancing in place to block the pony's path. Jack cocked his head as he assessed the slack-jawed driver. Even with a bandana covering his nose and mouth, Jack knew he was young. He didn't have the demeanor of the more experienced, untamed territory merchants who traveled with a rifle close at hand. This kid is as green as a new blade of grass. Jack slipped down from Zephyus's back as the kid goggled at him. He pulled out his revolver in a fluid motion. He meant business. He liked the way a greenhorn's eyes went all white-ringed like a spooked colt when his 6 guns came out. Zephyus's nostrils cupped as he inhaled the unfamiliar scent. I would leave him alone if I were you. Jack cast a furtive glance at the stallion, lips taut in response to the telepath's suggestion. Another mage, Jack mused. That was the only time Zephyus would suggest caution. The kid was young, not even worth calling a man. Jack had dealt with worse. You travel in the gutter. Jack's voice was gruff and dangerous. You got the toll? The young man kept his eyes averted. His terror at facing a flesh-and-blood outlaw froze him in place, like a rabbit in a hawk's shadow. A momentary pulse of satisfaction zinged through Jack. Yeah, he still had it. The kid stood before him, gaping. Jack cleared his throat to remind him he was waiting. The kid mumbled as his brain caught up with the situation. He rubbed at his hands as if they itched. Then the kid looked down at them, uncurling one hand. Golden coins flashed in the sunlight. Yes. Jack's lips quirked. He took a step closer, but Zephyus snorted and shook his head. I don't like whatever his magic is. I've not come across anything like it before. Jack scowled at Zephyus. The stallion minced backward like a spring colt. The Pegasus was no coward. He flicked his eyes back at the young man. What are you? The youngster fumbled over the question. What? Magic. Jack clarified, annoyance creeping into his voice. What's your magic, boy? The boy's lips clenched into a thin line, his eyes downcast. They call it breaker. Jack ignored the magical designation and clung to a single word in the sentence. They? You know other mages? The kid blanched and shook his head. No. He looked ready to throw the coins and bolt. Jack studied him, the familiar wave of disappointment washing over him. Another day without another damn lead. He gave the young man a curt nod. Get out of here then, kid. Sparks lit the young man's eyes at the epithet. I'm not a kid. Take your gold. The kid was a dunderhead to think he could talk like that to an outlaw. Jack's right hand tightened against the engraved grip of his 6-gun. Zephyus nickered a warning. Jack huffed out a breath and waved a hand in dismissal. He walked over to the Pegasus and prepared to mount, turning to address the kid with one boot in the stirrup. I don't take payment from greenhorn mages. Now get off my land. This isn't your land, the young man shot back. Jack narrowed his eyes, moving away from his steed. The gutter belongs to the outlaw mages. Who do you think you're talking to? Zephyus snorted, fretful. Knock it off. You're going to make things worse. Then take the damn gold, the young mage ground out, jumping down from the cart and walking toward him with his hand extended. The golden coins winked in the afternoon sunshine. Jack didn't fully register what happened next. The kid either tripped or took a bad step in a divot in the road. The cause didn't matter. His arms pinwheeled comically for balance. Gold coins arced into the air, chiming as they clattered to the dirt. The force of the fall sent the young man tumbling into Jack, and they sprawled to the ground in a jumble. A yelp of full-throated horror split the air as the young mage disentangled himself from Jack and crab walked away, face pale. Take it off, take it off. Jack rolled into a sitting position, staring at the young man. Is he addle-brained? What in perdition was wrong with him? What in Phaedra's name are you caterwauling about? I touched it. Your gun. Take it off. Throw it away. Something. The young mage trembled, every muscle taut. His hat tumbled away in the breeze, knocked off by the collision. Jack rose to his feet, glowering as he replaced the six-gun in the hip holster. No one in their right mind would demand an outlaw to disarm himself voluntarily. Jack. Zephyus never had the chance to say more. Jack was accustomed to the sound of gunfire. But nothing prepared him for the discordant concussion of his six-gun meeting its maker. The revolver at Jack's waist exploded with a deafening crack, the cylinder and barrel ripping away from the grip. The force of the explosion shredded his holster. Phaedra must have given him the grace of her protection because he wasn't hurt, but his ears rang from the force of the blast. Jack's mind raced, grappling with the unexpected event. He howled, a feral combination of rage and fear. Zephyus moved closer, protective, ears pinned back as he pawed the ground in warning. Jack unbuckled the gun belt and dropped it like it was a hissing snake. The shattered revolver tumbled out of the ruined confines of the holster. The barrel struck the ground with a pathetic metallic clank. Aside from the mangled mess of the gun, they were fortunate it hadn't done damage to either of them. Though Jack didn't feel charitable about the situation. Jack pulled a small pistol from his boot, his arm quivering with rage as he pointed it at the young man's head. He said nothing. There were no words for the anger that clawed through him. Only actions. Golden wings burst in front of him. Zephyus stood before the young mage. The stallion's ears were back, teeth bared. No. Your fault. You didn't listen. You do not get to claim vengeance. Damn Pegasus. Jack glowered. With a snarl, he holstered the pistol. Zephyus folded his wings and sidestepped. Get out of my sight. Jack's voice was cold and flat. It was so tempting to put a bullet right between those wide, frightened eyes. But Zephyus would interfere again. Get away from here, before I rethink the mercy I show kid mages. Swallowing, the young man staggered to his feet, scuttling to the pony cart. The stolid little pony had stayed put the whole time, indifferent to the debacle. The mage clambered into the cart, urging the pony off at a brisk trot. 2 golden coins glittered on the road behind them. Jack watched until the pony cart was only a dot on the horizon. Then he stomped his boots in the red dirt, growling as he balled his hands into angry fists to threaten the sky. After dealing with that mage, an old-fashioned hissy fit felt good. Annoyance prickled the back of his neck as Zephyus watched with mild amusement. He felt a little better once he got it out of his system. Jack reached down and picked up the ravaged revolver. He turned it over in his hands, assessing the catastrophic damage. He needed to empty the rounds, but with the hammer missing, there was nothing left to cock. Jack thumbed open the gate and discovered only pulverized shrapnel in the chambers. That half-grown colt had done this? It was laughable. It was ridiculous. Jack turned to glare at his Pegasus. Never get between me and my target. I told you to leave him alone, Zephyus pointed out, one hind hoof relaxed. The impertinent stud was calm since the threat had passed. Don't be a smart ass. How was I to know he'd blow my 6-gun to perdition and back again? My favorite 6-gun. Jack clenched his fists as he surveyed the surrounding area for the missing bits of his revolver. He wasn't foolish enough to leave anything behind that someone could later use against him. Maybe next time you'll listen when I say someone smells dangerous. You know, instead of going over and poking the rattlesnake in the snout. The palomino shook his silver mane. Yeah, Jack grumbled. Zephyus had warned him. And he hadn't listened. But in his defense, the young man was about as threatening as a day-old kitten. Even kittens have claws. Shut your trap. I don't want to hear it. Jack should have paid more attention when the kid identified himself as a breaker. He knew of breakers, by historical reputation, only because their line of chaotic magic was allegedly extinct. They were a breed of mage no one with any sense wanted to have on their side, or on the enemy's. They were a danger to everyone, as this encounter had proven. The kid's presence bothered Jack. With the news he had learned earlier that day, things didn't bode well for the kid. Jack presumed Decina was his homeland, judging by the direction he had headed. He was sure to be in jeopardy soon. The Salt Iron Confederation already knew the locations of all the mages in Decina. They were coming for them. You always say we could use more mages, Zephius observed. Stop spying on my thoughts, Jack grunted. He gave the stallion's shoulder a half-hearted shove. We don't need mages like him. How in perdition do you train that? Zephius arched his neck, looking away with tacit disapproval. Jack picked up a chunk of shrapnel, tucking it into his shirt pocket. He blew up my damned gun, Zeph. They will kill him if they can't use him, the Pegasus reminded him. Jack gritted his teeth. He's young. Believe me, they'd love to train that up. If they can. The Salt Iron Confederation would use him. Oh, how they would use a power like that. At least until it blew up in their faces. That thought cheered him. Would serve the damn salties right. I'm not allowing magic like that in Etude. Don't even think of mentioning it to the other ringleaders. Zephius lifted his tail and made a deposit on the road, a commentary of his opinion. Jack grunted and turned his back, scanning the ground for more bits of his revolver. He stowed the broken remains in his saddlebag, tucking a handkerchief around the cracked pearl handle. The corners of his eyes stung. He swiped away the wetness with one hand. Damn dust. Wildfire Jack, scourge of the untamed territory, didn't cry. But she had given him that 6-gun. And now it was beyond repair. After fastening the buckle on the saddlebag, Jack swung into the saddle. Back to town? Zephius asked. Yeah. Need to update the other ringleaders on the Salties' movements. Jack glanced over his shoulder. Too far away for the naked eye to see, Jack knew the Salt Iron Confederation was coming.